for being here. I may have to step away for a couple of minutes to take a call. Um, so if I interrupt the press conference, please bear with me. First of all, I wish to congratulate all of our athletes who did so well at the Caribbean Games. They made our country extremely proud, and also those who flew our flag high at the Indoor Hockey World Cup. Our athletes are doing better, and I'm sure that in future years they would not just continue to do well, but they would do extremely well because of the scale of investment in the infrastructure and support services that we're putting in place now to promote sports and culture. And you can see visible signs of this investment right across our country. In Linden, in Berbice, in Essequibo, in the hinterland regions, right in Region 3, another stadium there, and access to facilities so that our people can be better trained, and the support for athletes, which we have started a program to support athletes, can only serve us well in the future. So it is something that is consistent with our manifesto to invest more in sports, and we will continue to do it despite the occasional objections that we get from those who believe we're over-investing in sports facilities. Another promise that we made in the manifesto, as you know, we've indicated that more than 90% of our manifesto promises have been fulfilled. And one other promise we had made, the president recently sworn in the Constitutional Reform Commission. We had promised in opposition in our manifesto that we'd put in place a Constitutional Reform Commission to replace the one that APNU had done, headed by Nigel Hughes, and which was almost like a PNC commission to report to Nagamutu. Nothing came out of that commission. We said we'd use the same model that we had used when we reformed the Constitution in the late 90s. That is 5 from each political parties or government and opposition, equal numbers, and 10 from civil society. So the political parties would have 10 members on the commission, 5 from government, 5 from opposition, and then another 10 coming from civil society. We now have put in place that commission. You've seen the terms of reference of the commission outlined in the law that was passed last year. They're tasked with reviewing the last Constitutional Reform Commission, because there are many features there that people are calling for that they don't even know that exists in the Constitution. I've seen so-called civil society members and senior people in our society calling for changes that are already made in the last constitutional reform process. And so I think a good thing would be part of their work is educating the public as to what changed in the last constitution and how progressive that constitution is compared to many countries in the world, including the Western Hemisphere, because there are features there that we built in to our constitution that no country in this world has. And I'll come to a few of them a bit later. Maybe I should talk about them now, since it is something that we're extremely proud of. I recently saw the UN committee, the Human Rights Commission, speaking about ethnic-related issues and discrimination against people. And I wonder if they know that in our Constitution, that there is something called the Ethnic Relations Commission, which is made up in a bipartisan way, that the both sides in Parliament have to get together to name the bodies from which the members will come. So the commission has to be put together with bipartisan support. And whether they know about the powers that that commission has, I would dare say that no commission of a similar nature exists in any one of the Commonwealth countries, the 50-odd Commonwealth countries, or even in the developed countries in the world, where a constitutional body has the power to prevent a political party from contesting elections should they use race as a mobilizing factor. No constitution that I've seen has vested that power, especially a power to prevent people from running in elections, political parties, if they use race as a mobilizing tool. And that's a very, very powerful tool we have. So when you talk about the Human Rights Commission, talk about passing laws against discrimination, we already have laws that were passed in the late 90s, Anti-Discrimination Act. We have the Racial Hostility Act to prosecute cases of discrimination. And then we have the ERC, which is open to anyone to make complaints. And they have the powers of sanction over the executive. So that is why, I'll come to that a little bit later, we find that the information that has gone up are very selective, and the due diligence about the changes that have been made in Guyana, when we come up for review of these bodies, they're not done properly to explain the fullness of the measures we've put in place. So in this Constitutional Reform Commission, I heard people talking about electoral model and all of that. The last one, we changed the system where we had now 25 seats coming from the regions, and the rest of the seats coming through a PR system, but the overall system remained PR. We, in the last Constitutional Reform Commission, we ensured that every party has to submit a list with 1/3 of the delegates being women, at least 1/3 of the delegates being women. So we enshrine the Carter Center formula in the Constitution to ensure that GCOM was the particular composition of that commission, and the method to appoint the chairman of GCOM was a constitutional method. We used that formula for 25 years, and then what happened? Granger came into office, and he defied the Constitution, and he defied 25 years of common understanding and practice between the PNC and PPP as to how the Constitution should be applied in relation to the appointment of chairman of GCOM. We had a common understanding, we followed it, and the same interpretation, we subscribed fully to it. He came, he changed the Constitution, interpretation of the Constitution. In fact, he defied it, and he unilaterally appointed the chairman. So it is not just constitutional provisions that matter. We saw in our Constitution, we had this safeguard as to how to appoint the chairman of GCOM in the Constitution, and everyone understanding that the method of appointment. And then you had a government that came in and violated that. So how do you prevent parties from trying to rig elections? How do you prevent parties from complying with the Constitution, even when the Constitution has explicit provisions as to how you should, in this case, appoint the chairman of GCOM? Another very explicit provision of the Constitution was that 3 months after a government falls, you have to go to elections. The last government fell in November of December, I think it was 2018, and we didn't have elections until 2020, and we had to fight to get elections, going to court, public protests, etc. So all this talk about constitutional reform as though it's going to solve everything. If you have a party like the PNC that uses race as a mobilizing tool, and secondly, that wants to rig elections to get into office, you can't change that by toying with the Constitution. You have to change, they have to change themselves. And so one approach that we made very clear at the beginning when the small parties were calling for specific changes in one provision or another. We said this must be determined by the people of this country. The Constitution belongs to them. We had a widespread consultation. The changes were made. In the last Constitution, sometimes they even have not worked, like the appointment of the head of the judiciary, the chancellor and the chief justice. We moved from a situation where the president, after consulting with the leader of the opposition, would appoint these two persons. We said the leader of the opposition had to agree. And for many, many years, we didn't have security of tenure there. But the people wanted that, and we passed it into the new Constitution. So it is for the people to decide what they want, not anybody in no political party what they want that will serve their peculiar interests. The Constitution belongs to them. So when they go out there, that is why you have a broad-based sort of consultation here, and that is enshrined in the law, and the process is to come forward. We're not going to be captured by partisan agenda in this relation. So already Vincent Alexander says, oh, he wants to deal with two things, race relations and the reform at GCOM. They were part of the undermining of GCOM. They want a GCOM that APNU could control. That's what they want. They don't want free and fair elections. That's what he wants. And ethnic relations, they don't want to contest elections to win the elections. They want to either rig it or come to office through some arrangement that excludes the people of this country. And those things can't happen. They can't happen. They belong to the choices, will remain with the people of this country. All of them. And so we are very clear about the Constitutional Reform Commission. We're very pleased that the party fulfilled its promise to put in place the commission. It's broad-based, and it will do its work fully. The forest fires have been, and the fire, not just forest fires, but fires generally caused by the prolonged dry season, and in some cases, people deliberately setting the fires, but in most cases, the fires happening spontaneously because of the dry season. So this is bringing untold hardships to many people. It's causing problems, health problems, and the health ministry is fully aware of this, and they're mobilized to address this situation. And if anyone is affected health-wise by the smoke inhalation and all of these other issues associated with these fires, they should seek medical attention or get in touch with the ministry immediately. Secondly, it is affecting the livelihoods of some communities, where the drought has killed the crops in some of the arid parts of our country, Even on the coastal belt, we have had many communities that have asked us for water, irrigation water. I met with a group from Region 3, and they said, we're running out of water. And then I said, how can we get water for irrigation? And one guy said, you can pump it over from the conservancy. And then the rest of the farmers said, but the conservancy is practically dry at that point, at that place where we've had the water isn't there to pump. So simply, there isn't water in the area to sustain irrigation. And irrigation is the lifeblood of agriculture. If you don't have irrigation, it affects agriculture. So we've had that here on the coast, in the hinterland, in some of the areas, the crops have dried down. And then the fire has affected some of the farmlands in other areas in the hinterland. So the CDC is fully mobilized. Last night they were dealing with the evacuation of one community because of the smoke, and providing shelter for people, etc. This morning at about 6 a.m. I spoke to the regional chairman from Region 3. He's going into that community to look at what's happening there. I spoke to the head of the CDC last night. They're going to be there. We're supplying, as the president pointed out, hampers for some of the communities in Region 9 that have had all their crops. And those places, people mainly deal with subsistence farming. It's not like the coastal areas where people work elsewhere. They're mainly subsistence farming. So the issue is they don't just lose income, they lose food, a source of food. And therefore, we have supplied hampers. We're sending in cassava from the coast to some of the hinterland communities that we've procured elsewhere. So I want people to know that it's very little you can do about this prolonged drought season. Or this doesn't happen. It's not happening here in Guyana. Some countries have gone into famine because of the drought, the prolonged drought, in Africa and other places, where they don't have food now. And it's a phenomenon associated with climate change, something that we have spoken about all of the, for a very long time, the extreme weather that we will continue to experience. That is why we are spending so much of our resources on adaptation measures. You know that the entire sum of money that we are going to raise from the sale of forest carbon, maybe over $2 billion US dollars, will be spent from in the country on adaptation, outside of the part that goes directly to the Amerindian villages. And that is to manage water resources. In periods when we have excess water, to get rid of it so they don't cause flooding, and then to make accommodation, like more reservoirs, etc., for the prolonged drought season. Because regardless of what happens globally, even if you change the world's behavior tomorrow, and that's not going to change because a lot of them are still using fossil fuel, we are going to still experience climate change or the effects of climate change. So we are adapting for this. So we're going to continue. That's why the government will continue to invest in these issues. Many of you have read the statement out of the Foreign Ministry. The strong statement relating to the defense of our sovereignty and territorial integrity, given the action taken by President Maduro to promulgate this organic law, which purports to establish a state called Essequibo in the legislation of Venezuela. Now, clearly, this is a form annexation by decree, by law, although it's not physical annexation. and it runs contrary to the Argyle Agreement and to what the process that we're engaged in now before the ICJ. In fact, it runs counter to the provisional measures given by the World Court that prohibits any change of the status quo in relation to the 1899 award. And so Venezuela is seeking to unilaterally change this. We have already notified all of our partners. We brought this to their attention. The bad faith negotiations of Venezuela. And so they are aware of what's happening. Many of them are expressing concern and also outrage about this approach, the untrustworthy nature of the regime there. And we are not going to let our guards down. So I hope that the country recognizes this. Our lawyers have been briefed. Everyone has been fully briefed on this matter. Today's press conference by APNU is, anyhow, I don't see anything much to deal with here. I look through the stuff, the usual stuff, the usual. So one statement, expanded generation capacity, and they had multi-year planning at GPL. Now the situation is bad. There's no sugarcoating this. That we have a situation at GPL that we've explained 100 times before. But often explanations don't suit people when the light goes off because it disrupts their lifestyle. It disrupts their normal activities. It causes untold hardships for them. Sometimes their equipment, they get destroyed. So I understand the feeling there because we live in this society, and when the light goes off 4 or 5 times at home for me too, I have a generator, but it creates sometimes problems there too. But I can imagine, for me, it's disruptive. For me, it's disruptive. We pick up the phone immediately and call, what's going on again? Every day, this is something. So we're not going to say that people are not justified in the harsh comments they make, because we feel it ourselves, because we live here and we're consumers. It's not that the government is aloof from these concerns. So sometimes explanations don't help at that moment. But I want people to consider what we are faced with. So one is that we lost a major opportunity to change out all of these old units when APNU killed the hydropower. So what happened? The hydropower was supposed to come into being in 2017 to start supplying power to the country. That's 165 megawatts of power. Now we have the demand, peak demand is 180 megawatts now. We have now functioning 166 megawatts of units. So the peak demand is above installed capacity. But most of these equipment were equipment bought by the PPP over the years, and they were older equipment. They've lived through a long cycle. So our plan was to have the hydropower come in, replace these old equipment, so you have new generation, and then all of the older equipment goes into reserve. And then you can buy new units, etc. So APNU killed the hydropower. We started off with this. So all along, I thought that they were saying it was a corrupt. They killed it because it's corrupt. And two, because basically this was it, that it would not serve their country well. So last night I'm Googling, and I saw Patterson. I didn't pay too much attention to what he said in the parliament. He said, Amilas Fall hydropower was not killed by the opposition, Patterson. He said this in the last budget debate. And then he said this, this is the Mara Waves. Mr. Patterson said that the coalition administration later realized that the actual cost of electricity from Amilas Falls would have been 30 US cents per kilowatt hour, because the power plant would have cost $858 million plus $138 million capital expenditure for GPL, transmission and distribution of electricity from that side. $40 million equity for the sponsor and $3 million for the relocation of 30 residents. When we did the computation, sir, this flagship cheap Amila project they came up with, the tariff ended up at 30 cents US. That's why, sir, the project is dead. So he's saying that the project, they killed the project. They didn't proceed with it because the cost of power would have been 30 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, if you look at this, so it sounds very logical. It sounds very logical. But Patterson is a unique character. He lies blatantly. So Amila was 165 megawatts. Assuming the dispatch was 95%, so the power was available, say 95% of the capacity. So I just got the people to calculate here today. We converted 165 megawatts into gigawatt hours. And we came up with 1.37 gigawatt hours per annum. If you multiply 1.3 gigawatt hours per annum, it comes up by 30 cents. It comes up to $411 million per annum we had to pay to the producers for power. Now the project was about 800 million, and we had to pay $411 million per year to buy the power from them. So in 2 years, you would have paid back for the project. The fact of the matter is that this was a 20 years project. Two, if you check the documents, we were capping our expenditure on purchase of power at $100 million. That is why it was 10 cents per kilowatt hour. We have the draft, the PPA, the power purchase agreement. This guy goes to the parliament and he lies about this. At that time, we were selling power just over 30 cents. We were selling power over 30 cents per kilowatt hour because the fossil fuel generation was 20-something cents per kilowatt hour. How would we buy hydropower for 30 cents per kilowatt hour when that's US cents? When we were generating from fossil fuel at 20 cents per kilowatt hour. But We said publicly that it was 10 cents per kilowatt hour. This is why the Norway consultants on the APNU came, and after they reviewed the project, they said this is the best project for the country for providing stable power, cheaper power, and also they cut your emissions. This man went to Parliament and lied as to why Amila didn't proceed. But we know that APNU objected to Amila. They wanted to kill it because they didn't want it to happen under the PPP. The same way they're trying to kill the gas to energy project now. So they killed Amila. So we didn't get the 220. In 2017, the 165 megawatts. So one would think if you kill the Amila, you then will replace it with something else. You can't run the system using these old pieces of equipment. So what did they do in 5 years? So the Patterson again. Patterson said, in our 5 years, we added 60 megawatts of generating capacity to the power, to GPL. So one would think the 5 years, they did a great job. They didn't go with Amila. So now you have to still rely on the old equipment because Amila would have supplanted that's where they would have supplied the power. All these old equipment would go on into reserve. So we didn't do Amila. So what were we doing? You remember they were going with wind energy. They had a company link up who was an AFC, one of their AFC contributor, who built their office in Camberville. They built the AFC office, had a contract or an arrangement to supply wind power to them. We were working on that at Hope, from Hope Wind Farm. That failed. The 60 megawatts that Patterson a few days lied about that they added was 5.5 at Canefield. Okay? And that they added 5.5 megawatts at Canefield in 2018. That collapsed after 6 months. Then they added at Anna Regina 5.4 megawatts, and I think 1.8 megawatt is working. So we had another set of issues there. Bartica, 3.3 megawatts. And then 46.5 megawatts, he said they added at Garden of Eden. So that's how he accounts for the 60 megawatts of power. Well, the 46.5 megawatts of power that he said that they added, in 3 months before the elections, through a deal that was not a public tender, they signed a contract to buy this 46.5 megawatts. 3 months before the 2020 elections, after the no confidence motion too. They then signed a deal to buy this 46.5 megawatts. They made one payment, and then every other payment was made after the elections. When we got into office, this was the site. This was a site picture taken from the 2020 August. And the equipment were still in Finland. They hadn't even left Finland. So they added another 46 of the 60. They just made a down payment 3 months before the elections, and then payments after the elections, but nothing came here. So we have had to bring that in and get it installed. That is how APNU plans. So effectively, what they added in 5 years was 14 megawatts of power. 14 megawatts of power, and much of which is not working. Some of it is not working. So this is a typical lie told by Patterson. And today they doubled down on it. They expanded generation, and this was a result of multi-year planning. So where is this multi-year planning? We left 85 million at the IDB that should have gone to the hydro as equity money we earned from Norway, the PPP earned through the sale of forest carbon. They were planning to use it for solar. They said, forget the hydro. 5 years passed, they couldn't even use the money. They didn't even have a project, not one project. We even left them the money. They had $85 million to use, and they couldn't use it in the 5 years. So 14 megawatts they had for a couple of small units that they bought. And so we came back into office and then found all of the same old equipment, no plan for the gas to energy project to deal with the power in a real definitive way, because you need to replace all the generating capacity. Not a bit, all of it is old equipment. They killed the hydro, didn't add any power to the system. So when you come into office now, and you have a country growing throughout COVID, we had to work to get all of this power plant put in place, because you saw, I just showed you the picture, how it was. We had to bring the engines from Finland and everything, put it in place. And so now, what we have in these 3.5 years, we have bought maybe about 40 megawatts, just over 40 megawatts of power, maybe near 50 megawatts of power. But we have these old units that should have been replaced in 2017 by a miler that we still have to coax along. And what has grown, what has happened is that the demand has grown. Now, anyone here in Guyana would understand what the demand, the growth in demand. You just look at the housing schemes. More houses, air-conditioned houses, more people getting more money, they're putting in AC. You have a number of business ventures that are opening up, factories, oil and gas projects, hotels, etc. They're utilizing significantly more power. So our demand has grown, but we're still limping along with the old equipment. And we bought new units too. So we said, how do we deal with this definitively? We don't need 165 megawatts anymore. We need 300 megawatts. And that is why we started the gas to energy project that will come on stream next year, cut the price of electricity by 50%, and solve this issue definitively. Then we can take all of the old units we have and put them into reserve, because the country, the peak demand now in GPL is 180, and a lot of people who are self-generating will come onto the grid because they would have cheaper power. We'll have all the power we need. So we are working, one, on a long-term solution. You ask Patterson or APNU what was their long-term solution. It couldn't be wind because they screwed up the wind project. It couldn't be solar because they had 5 years and the money we left them there. It couldn't be even fossil fuel because it's their 5 years, it's 14 megawatts of power they put in 5 years. So it wasn't hydro because they killed the hydro. So what is the long-term power? You can't plug it in Norton's mouth when he talks a lot and get the power, or Patterson's mouth. You gotta invest. And we are investing, and everybody trying to kill that gas to energy project. Every day they have a concern about it. But they couldn't start it because they wanted a kickback. They wanted to buy the lands where the project would have gone, so they would have made money from the resale of the land. It was there, we started it, and now we have a long-term plan. Our long-term plan, not long-term, our medium-term plan, next year, 300 megawatts coming in to replace all of these. Right now, we're looking to buy another maybe 40 to 80 megawatts of power. We are already in the process of doing this because this will, for 2 years, we will buy this power for until the gas to energy project comes. We don't want a long-term contract because you'd end up paying for capacity charge if you buy this and not use the power because the gas to energy will supply the whole interconnected grid. So we have a short-term plan next year. We have an even shorter-term plan to buy more power now. We are fixing the T&D systems. We're going back to a miler because we want to have a different energy mix and a cleaner sort of energy. We're putting in 35 megawatts of solar panel now. The contract has been awarded for most of them in Linden, in Essequibo, and Berbice. Solar panels, we've just put in 30,000 units, small units in households in the hinterland. Ask APNU what their plan was. And all I'm saying is that this doesn't excuse what's happening now. But the only party that is trying to solve this problem, they talk a lot, but they don't solve any problem. They can't solve any problem. They don't have the capacity. Patterson was just sitting. It was a cash cow for Myla. Let me tell you something else. You see, the rate, I asked the people at GPL to come up with their rate. In 2016, the tariff was $56 Guyana dollars per kilowatt hour, and the price of oil that GPL was buying oil for, a barrel, $44. 44 US dollars per barrel, and the tariff, the price we pay for electricity was $56. This year, it's $104 per barrel, moving from $44 to $104, and people are paying a lower tariff at GPL from $56 to $50 now per kilowatt hour. So the price of fuel has more than doubled, and we're still keeping that because we're putting in $100 million US of subsidy to keep the prices down, so this big escalation in fuel price globally doesn't affect the consumers in this country. That's our commitment to people. So yes, the performance of GPL is atrocious in many cases, but also we are dealing with a real fact, growth in demand and the old equipment. And this thing is not like you could buy a unit today. You can't buy a hydro and get it done, built in a year. You have to plan long term. It takes 3-4 years to build the hydro. The power plant we're building there is 3-4 years to build a major proper power plant. So if you don't make any decisions 3 years, 4 years ago, like they did, nothing basically, when you come in, you're faced with this. And we have a clear plan. Clear plan. I've just outlined elements of it to you. So this is pure nonsense. Patterson has once again lied to the people of this country. He has a habit of doing that. That's the first point. I want to play something for you. This is what we have to deal with every single day, their lies. So this is a program with Coretta McDonald and Patterson a couple days ago.
You know, David, as we go on, I want us to look at the aircraft. The aircraft was it for me. The aircraft was it for me. Oh, jeez. In there we're told bought 3 or 5 or whatever aircrafts for $8 million. And how much they sell it to us for? 30, 25 million?
Over 28. No.
You hear that? So Coretta McDonald said the aircraft was it for her. Massive corruption now. That this is it for her. Imagine Coretta McDonald talking about corruption. She's been general secretary of that union for years. They can't account for the $2 billion. No audited statements. She's squatting in parliament based on her own, the rules of her union, which prohibit the general secretary of a union from sitting in parliament as a member of parliament. She is, and shamelessly talks about corruption. Coretta McDonald talking about corruption is like the Lincoln Lewis, the same category she is in. So she says, oh, one, that this is it for her. The Indian government bought these aircrafts for $5 million. So, implying that the Indian government is gouging us, that they bought some equipment for $5 million and selling it for, Patterson said, to us for $28 million, these aircraft. That's coming. So, Coretta McDonald has issues with India. I saw her statement about people living on the street or whatever like that. India is one of the major economies. It has an economy running into trillions of US dollars. It has one of the largest armies in the world, sophisticated nuclear power. It was the first country in the world to land on the south side of the moon. So Coretta McDonald needs to upgrade her knowledge about India. That's the first thing. Secondly, these aircrafts were not bought by the government of India and sold back to the government of Guyana. So let me give you the details first of all. So the two aircrafts were bought from the Indian government. These are aircrafts that are new aircrafts that were bought from the Indian government at $8 million each, $16 million. We bought $6.23 million of spares for these two aircrafts, including reserve engine, propellers, etc. And then about another $1 million in training of 19 persons, including the pilots, engineers, technicians, flying the aircrafts to Guyana, and also deploying engineers here from India for 6 months to work with us. So the total is $23.37 million, but only for the aircraft themselves, it's $16 million for the two aircraft. Patterson said $28 million. So that's the first lie. So these, I don't need to go through. You can look at the capability of these aircrafts. They can carry 19 passengers. You can fly to Barbados directly with an aircraft of this nature. You don't have to refuel. You can land almost on all of our airstrips. They can carry the troops wherever we want around the country. They can deploy our troops because they have the capacity now. They can carry cargo, etc. These are new aircrafts that we bought, $8 million apiece, and lots of training, our technicians, etc. Now, Coretta McDonald, the Indian government bought them from somewhere and sold them to us. The Indian government didn't sell us. The Indian government provided a line of credit, a cheap line of credit, that the interest rate on that line of credit is now 1/5 of what we can get elsewhere if you go commercially. Interest rate is a low interest rate. We bought these aircraft from the company that manufactures them in India directly. So that's one, directly from the manufacturers. When we bought the two helicopters, we bought them directly from Bell, the manufacturers. We didn't go through middlemen and the kickback schemes that they get. They went to the manufacturers. They were saying, Ramjatan said, we bought these 50-year-old helicopters, lying again. They have this capacity to lie, the 50-year-old helicopter. It was new. They were both new helicopters that we bought, including the one that crashed. New helicopters. So, new equipment directly from the manufacturers we procure. We send our technicians out. That's the difference. What happened in the APNU period? They bought 4 pieces of equipment, 4 planes for tens of millions of dollars. Now, they brought an islander from Brazil. The date of manufacture was 1975. That one is still working, right? They bought another islander, again from Brazil, 1976, that never worked. Never worked. They bought a Skyvan, 2 Skyvans from the UK. One was manufactured in 1979 and another in 1975. One was working because they took part from another one to fix that one. And only in July of 2023, we got the second one working. So, and guess what the catch is? They bought all of these through middlemen. So, you know what happens. They went through middlemen. Now, Patterson was part of the cabinet that did this. He was in charge of civil aviation. He knows about this. Contrast the two. And Coretta McDonald is concerned about corruption here. Oh, that's it. The Indian government buy these things. Bunch of lies again. Patterson and Coretta McDonald sitting down to lie again. So a lot of people listening to them would say, oh, it's a corrupt deal. They paid $28 million for the aircraft. Patterson said, oh, it's $28 million. And the Indian government bought it and resold it. We bought directly from the manufacturers new equipment from a line of credit supplied by India itself. So, another lie. And Patterson, he said he went on YouTube and found the prices. I don't know YouTube. If he believes everything in YouTube, he should believe all that they're saying about him too, which I'll come to in a moment. So we have established again another set of lies. Patterson at the center of it, Coretta McDonald dealing with it. But since we're dealing with Patterson, and he talks a lot, he may want to be so, since he's so forthcoming and he has an opinion on everything now, he may want to share his opinion that how the $600 million went missing from the Durban Park project, because his ministry was in charge of that project. The $600 million still missing. He may want to share his views on that, and may want to share his views about the court case where he was charged for corruption with the Demerara Harbor Bridge study, that you recall that. And he may want to share his views about why on that same thing, why he violated the Procurement Act by taking an unsolicited bid, bypassing the tender board directly to the cabinet, and how he got the Demerara Harbor Bridge to use its money to pay for that, and even above what the tender price was. He may want to share his views on how the scales went to his friend and consultant, the guy from Jamaica, who is a political consultant, helped to put the Lelendal Accord together. They brought him in to bring the two parties together. That man got us to supply scales to Guyana that never arrived, $80 million. Patterson may want to share his views on that. He may want to share his views why the Chinese company deposited $9,000 directly into his bank account. And only when, I don't know if he is reimbursed until now, the state, because the state had already paid for that trip. And when it was exposed, he made some flimsy excuse. He may want to tell the people of this country why at the airport, when we had $67 million to do the airport, a new airport, and the apron at the airport, the standing area, why he changed that to a rehabilitation project that cost of the existing airport, so the spanking new airport, Patterson changed that with the Chinese contractors to refurbish the existing airport. We signed a contract and we left it with them for a new airport and an apron that would have cost 67 million US. That was part of it. They took that 67 million out of the contract and ended up giving the Chinese company a few million for rehabilitating the airport. That they gave them, they didn't adjust the contract price downwards, but we got a rehab airport rather than a new airport building. He should explain all of these things. And I hope that the media would follow up too. The problem is that the media doesn't follow up on any of these things. So you can have somebody like Patterson doing this. And, you know, in this country, he is the public exposure man. I saw the most ridiculous reason why, and it will come out in the public domain, why his case on public exposure was dismissed by the magistrate court. You should dig into that a bit more. And I hope that that comes out too. So let's establish a few things. And I'm not going to even talk about the golden bangles and the fancy gifts that he got. So if Patterson wants to talk about corruption, they should come straight on all these matters. Every one of these cases, they were part of some arrangement. He's been charged on several of these issues. Correct? They want me investigated again. They investigated me for 5 years after saying they would lock me up in 2015. 5 years, they had full-fledged Soku, Sarah, everybody, internationally, etc., looking for money and never found anything. So I'm still here. But I'm telling you real cases. I'm telling you real cases. So this is the sort of thing we get from Patterson. A set of lies, as we saw with the aircraft, and fiend sort of outrage. You know, I'm so upset. This is it for me, from Coretta McDonald. When she has a stinking track record in the union, she's, oh, the Indian government buy these aircraft, and a bunch of lies they told. And Patterson with his thing, he put 60 megawatts of power in the system. 60 megawatts of power and the concern there. So as I said before, we have to fix it. Whatever it takes, we can't continue with these blackouts, whether it means management changes, upgrading management, buying more power, which we are looking at now to take us past the period when the new power plant comes in next year. Next year would be a critical year. That's why when I go out and people say, we want street lights, I would say to them, wait until the gas to energy comes. We're struggling now to keep pace with supplying power to all these new developments. Every new house that's built is more power, new ACs, etc. We're struggling now because we have these old equipment that should have been replaced but were not replaced. And that is how I want people to see these issues. Now, I see another, Apnu wants the PPP not paying enough attention to the paddy bug infestation that the farmers are faced with. Can you believe these people? They're concerned about the rice farmers now. This is the group that cut almost to a bare minimum farm-to-market roads, drainage and irrigation budget. Massive cuts in drainage and irrigation farm-to-market roads. Granger told the rice farmers, you can't get help. This is private sector. Thirdly, they put the taxes on pesticides, on fertilizer, the VAT. They increased the land charges. They increased water charges for the farmers in places like MME and stuff. And now they're concerned about paddy bug infestation. So we're looking at this. The rice farmers know that they would always get support. Every time we give them any help to the rice farmers, you would hear them speak about it at the concern, and then they would say, oh, it's Indian people. You're all helping these Indian people. That's what they say in Parliament. You tried to pass a budget to deal with paddy bug infestation. You would hear the comments there. But it's crocodile tears. The same thing with the sugar workers. Ramjatan now who said that Kaisuko should be shut down. It's a black hole. Why are you keeping the... He wanted to shut down the whole industry, not 7,000 workers. Now he loves the sugar worker. He was leading the strike, protest in front of the office of the president from some workers from Rose Hall, telling them they should get the severance money. They were not severed, but they must get the severance money that we give to the other workers beyond their severance that APNU was denying them. And he went to protest with them. Shameless, shameless people. And no doubt they would start loving the miners soon after trying to kill the mining industry with layering on the taxes. So everybody now makes it to the press conference. So you can't believe much of what they say. It's the usual stuff. We're continuing with AFC projects. The farmers need cash grant. They want the farmers to get it. If you start giving the farmers, you're going to see something else. So that's fine. So one matter that came up a lot during the course of this week is the UN issue, the UNHRC. So several things. You have almost 3 editorials in the Starbuck News, because Starbuck News is one of the parties that made submissions there. The oil and gas network made submissions, but you know they're made up of the anti-PPP people, all of them who are former AFC and government haters. They're ashamed now to link up with APNU, but they hate the PPP, so they find these new organizations. So the shadow reports were there, etc. So the criticism here in these editorials are that we're again too thin-skinned. The PPP is thin-skinned, that we criticize the NGOs here, and that we were too confrontational with the committee, and through Gail Teixeira waged a too robust defense of Guyana and what we're doing. Let me say at the outset, we are extremely proud of Gail Teixeira and her advocacy on behalf of the government of Guyana in laying out the facts of the changes that are taking place in Guyana, our track record on human rights, and generally for the rights of the Guyanese people that the PPP government has secured and continue to secure. Gail Teixeira did a great job, an admirable job. But if you know Gail Teixeira, she will defend this country to her last breath. And she will do so robustly in the face of lies being told. They want us to roll over for the sake of how it looks globally. The government is too confrontational and too robust. So you want us to look like meek people, to be lectured to by these people again, when they don't have all the facts, because many of them have not done the research on Guyana. So they didn't take time to go through our constitution to see all these new features. In fact, what they were doing was a repetition of a lot of the comments made by the opposition and by these NGOs that are hostile to us. So what must Gail Teixeira do? She must say, oh, we love this NGO, they did a great job here. We subscribe to all the lies that they told about us for the sake of the looks. Gail Teixeira pointed out the lies that they were telling, and we pointed out who they are. Because for you to do a proper assessment, an objective assessment of Guyana and our track record, you need to understand the people who are trying to feed you their propaganda. And if we don't do that, then who else is going to do it? So many people around the world will believe the lies that are there. So Gail Teixeira, I would urge you to read. I can't go through all of it here today. It's a long set. So read the submission by the government of Guyana at the beginning on every matter, on extrajudicial killing, on the attempt to steal the elections, on corruption, on everything else. You will be impressed with the legislative changes and the robust framework that we have in this country. And it's not a 2 hours affair or a 3 hours affair over 3 days that could properly do justice to nearly 20 odd years of reform in Guyana, because the last review was done, I think, about 20 years ago, and the next review will be in 10 years from now. I think 2032 might be about 9 years from now. So you have 3 hours there and 1 day after to present and respond to these issues. All the legislative changes. If you look at the Gail Teixeira listed the legislation that we have passed to support people against sexual violence, against discrimination. We have passed robust legislation. The constitutional changes with so many provisions to protect people's rights on indigenous people. Which country in the world has an act like ours? The Amerindian Act of Guyana, with the provisions on land titling, a clear path to land titling and subsurface rights. You are going to compare us to, well, we must not defend ourselves, to say we have one of the best protection enshrined in law passed by our government 2006 to protect the indigenous people and confer them with rights of self-governance in their own communities, etc. by the act. You show me another country that has done that. So we have nothing to be ashamed of our track record. We must involve the indigenous people more in free, prior, informed consent. In every one of the 211, in fact 242 communities now, that we have, they have received the money, and you have over 800 projects already completed from the LCDS resources. Those communities had to opt into their development plan, assign minute of the meetings that they had with the bulk of the villagers. When has such a level of consultation been done? The entire NTC has supported it. But we must not say that, because we must let APA say, oh, we have the right to decide what free, prior, informed consent is, or some editorial in the Starbuck News. We must not defend our track record. Oh, Gail Teixeira and Jagdeo, they're too confrontational. We defend what we stand for, our policies. We have made significant changes, and a lot of people are out there trying to distort our record. But in terms of people's rights, in this country we have some of the most robust systems in place to defend people's rights constitutionally. And we must not speak about our achievement or say, oh, you're giving us 140 questions and you're giving us 40 minutes to respond to these. So people hear your questions, but they couldn't hear our response, because you say, submit your response in writing. They hear your questions about the treatment of Haitian people, so a Haitian or Venezuelan. So they want us now, the recommendations, we must change our laws to deal with refugees and people who come here like migrants. So APNU on one hand saying, oh, we mustn't be careful, don't give these people rights. The UN committee wants the law to change so that once people come here and they claim refugee status, etc., you can get rid of them. Shouldn't our people have a say in that? If we do that tomorrow, and you have 40,000 people come here and claim refugee status, and you can't displace them, you can't move them, because then you have to examine it carefully and go through a process, a legal process almost to identify each case and hear each case. We have already a backlog in our system in the judiciary. We got to hear 40,000 individual cases, and you can't get rid of people. And then we are obligated to provide them with the help, financial means, while they're here too. You think we should do that because the committee just says that? Just like that? To strengthen our laws in relation? How would APNU wants that? But they want the human rights report. Our constitution, Gail Teixeira pointed out several times, many of the European bodies, international bodies, want us to almost put in our constitution gay rights provision, or to get rid of the death penalty. Our people have a strong view. On one hand, the government, you want governments to be accountable to people and say good governance is when government listens to people. And then you, on the other hand, you want them to bypass the process of constitution. We can't change the constitution on our own. Bypass what the public opinion is in the country to pass provisions that may end up with our people opposed to it. We live in these societies. They're living societies. So should we now go and change our constitution to remove the death penalty, or to say that, same-sex marriages could be happening in Guyana? That has to go to our people. They have to decide. No political party can decide on their own that they want to do this sort of thing. Now we prevent discrimination against people based on sexual orientation. There should be no discrimination whatsoever on based on sexual orientation. Access to jobs, etc. They must not be targeted to police. They must by police or law enforcement. They must enjoy every other benefit as any Guyanese. But concepts like same-sex marriages, etc., those are a little alien to the Caribbean. You're telling us now you must pass provisions here, or the government needs to do this. That's a constitution matter for the Constitution and our people. So how come they're not saying anything about that? APNU, they want to do all the other provisions. I don't notice them saying anything about how they want now that Granger promised, that we said we will do now, the commission of inquiry on what they call the trouble period. The trouble period, where they said we killed all our Afro-Guyanese extrajudicially, etc., 400 people. It's a total lie. So they will have the commission of inquiry. They wanted it. They promised it to the UN. They didn't do it because they knew what the outcome was that they would be implicated. I'm telling you that the PNC would be implicated in the crime wave. And the people of Buxton and the country will not forgive them for what they put this country through. So how come all of those things don't get highlighted? How come the attempt to thief the elections doesn't get highlighted, although those were key issues? How come the attempt to undermine, I see the Human Rights Commission talk about GCOM and the management there. How come they didn't talk about the attempt by the staff to hijack the elections by the commission? How come they didn't talk about Granger, or they don't talk here today about Granger violating the Constitution twice by not going to elections in the prescribed period after the no confidence motion, and secondly, by unilaterally appointing the head of GCOM? How come they don't highlight these? Those are all issues there before the commission, and those are more fundamental issues. I just told you about corruption. We've had more investigation of corruption, although we didn't have to do it through SARA, because several ministers are charged now with actual corruption. We found things to charge them with. The problem is the judiciary is just slowing up the trials. slowing things down. And they're using the system, slowing things down. And so you should look at the response of the government of Ghana, and to say to Starbuck News and all the editorial, sometimes they're on their high horses, that they believe that they're the conscience of the society. I believe it's a few individuals. You were chastising us for defending ourselves robustly. You're calling Gail Teixeira names for doing that. You should be proud of her, that she's exposing the lies that people tell about our country. It's our country after all. And some of the NGOs are they're determined to bring down our country. Look at what happened with this, I forgot her name, Vanda Radzic, on that when she was interviewed here. She didn't even know what she wanted. But we're creating climate change globally and all that nonsense. They feed into this external thing. We must ensure that there is no corruption in the oil and gas area. Well, if they had only reviewed the natural resources fund amendments that we made under this government, where we have criminalized non-disclosure and put a 10-year jail term for the Minister of Finance in it, they wouldn't have even uttered that comment to know how serious we are about this. They wouldn't have done that. We must ensure, this is a human rights body, we must ensure that the resources of the oil and gas sector reach all of the people. Well, they didn't know the struggle we had to pass the local content law, which is now driving $700 million of business to local companies, 1,500 companies, and people are hired. Now, just look at the youngster who did that interview with Stephen Sakor. And when he talked about Gisby, the young guy working there, he said 96% of the staff here are Ghanese. When they asked him, are people benefiting? So not all over the country, people not benefiting directly, but indirectly. They're already starting to, entire country is benefiting because there are more jobs now, there are more infrastructure projects, more hospitals, more everything else that we're building. So I'm not going to go through the details of these because they handpick what would go. Vincent Adams now, he's concerned about Gail Teixeira, what Gail Teixeira said. Vincent Adams was a politician who was heading the EPA. Let's put the matter to rest there. Vincent Adams was on AFC platform. You got public images of him on the platform of AFC, political platform. Let's take a politician now and put him to head the EPA. Just imagine we had done the converse. We had done the converse of that. We had placed a politician to head the EPA. Every day we'd be slaughtered. Suddenly he's become, the darling of the Kachor, and now even I see the Stabrook, because he says the things they want to hear. They were talking about environmental permits for the exploration activities. In 19 instances, I think, under him, they gave waivers for those activities. How come that record is not? But forget all of that, what he did at the EPA. He was a politician that they put at the head to head the EPA, and that's clear to everybody. The current head of the EPA doesn't hold a PPP membership card. He was the deputy there for maybe a number of years. He worked at the EPA for maybe 20 odd years. I don't even know how long, because it was been there ages. He grew in the organization. He was the deputy under APNU, and then he left. And he came back, a career man in the area. Not a politician, but they will denigrate him. But this politician, suddenly they love the politician. This is convenient politician. For me, he has no credibility too. So suddenly that's the focus. Gail Teixeira was too harsh on him. the PPP is too robust in its defense. I don't have any. There was a time when we were a little hesitant about defending our track record because I think it was a guilt trip they had us on. Oh, you don't defend so much. Let the space for the NGOs. But these are not NGOs. They're political organizations disguised as NGOs. And so if you come after our track record and you lie after us, we have no shame about it. And Gail Teixeira should be commended by this nation again. So all of these comments about Gail Teixeira, we shouldn't really pay them too much attention. I think I'm going to end here. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Dr. Jagdeo and Asilium Skytree News. On the rising prices in society, we've seen a lot of persons, like on social media and as well as in the general public, they've been continuously, I should say, complaining about the rising cost of living, the cost of construction, and now there's a new thing where the US dollar, it's scarce, and also the exchange rate would have risen. Currently in some places you would see it above $220 to one. What do you have to say about this current situation? Can you comment on this?
All right, so give me all your questions because you got a long list here. So go ahead.
It's not a long list, but okay.
All right, how many? I'll limit you to 4, then I'll come back a second round. So give the others a chance.
Perfect.
So 4 in the first round, okay, your news, and then I'll come back. Your second round.
Okay, secondly, when it comes to the foreign direct investments, has your administration ever done a cost-benefit analysis weighing the pros and cons of these investments? And also, can you say besides jobs, what else has the Guyanese been able to benefit from these? And thirdly, sir, we've seen that this year's budget is funded 40% by loans. However, we've also seen that there are a lot of debts also being added. Like, for example, the IDB loan for street lights. We've had another IDB loan for the good success to Timeri Road, and also another loan for the Sus Dike to Linden Highway. Now, some persons are concerned that even though the budget is being funded by 40% loans, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the government is still currently adding debt to the country. Can you justify this?
Those are the 3?
Oh, one more.
Go ahead.
In relation to, I'm going to call it a wild goose chase with us and you and the Ministry of Natural Resources and the GRA with relation to the release of the audits for the oil audit reports. Can you say when we're going to have some sort of a definite date or a time frame when these reports can be released? Because we come here, we ask you, you send us to GRA or the Ministry of Natural Resources, and then when we reach out to them, they don't respond via call or text, and then we have to end up back here. So we're asking, when can these reports be released?
All right. So let me go through a couple of these things. I have the distinct memory of responding to almost every one of these issues. But I'm going to respond once again with the hope that you're not going to come back another 3 months and ask me the same questions. And that might be a distant hope, but I'm still hopeful. Sometimes I get bored also in coming here because I have to respond to the same things over and over again. And the opposition doesn't deal with policy. So every week it's very hard. If they had policies and they were proposing policy positions, it would be easy for me to come here and rebut policies or share our views. So they don't, so I have to fight boredom here. But since you asked the questions, I'll respond to them one more time. So you mentioned that the budget is funded by 40% loans. So, and then we're adding additional debt by all of these contracts that you see sign and stuff, and you named a few of these. So even last week, I explained to you that less than 30% of the budget is funded from oil and gas resources. Maybe another 35–40% is funded from non-oil and gas revenue, and the rest from loans. So when you go to when you present a budget, the budget is not the speech that Ashni Singh makes or the Minister of Finance. You could almost not make a speech. You can go there and get up and say to the National Assembly, I hereby signify that the Cabinet has approved this budget to be tabled here in the National Assembly. I propose that we pass the budget without any debate. And if the budget is passed, there wouldn't be no need for any budget speech or a debate, because the budget is made up mainly in the estimates of the budget. Have you ever gone to the estimates? So if you have ever read the estimates, they have several volumes, and in great detail they outline the projects to be funded and the source of funding, but often the projects to be funded. So for this year, for which you are seeking parliamentary approval, or the heads under which budgets, the sums are allocated. So that sets up, once the budget is passed, that gives you the framework for your expenditure for the year. If I say the Linden-Soestdijk Highway Road will be in the budget this year, so we'll get approval for maybe, it's a $200 million road to repave the whole road. So we may put in, say, $50 million this year, because we anticipate in the first year, that is, by the time you get the contract going, that is what will be expended. And that $150 million will be budgeted next year for the same project. So, because it's over a time period. So $50 million is approved there. But we may not have concluded the loan agreement as yet. When you see the loan being signed and you report on it, the budget has already approved the expenditure. And that is what Norton and the others didn't understand, and including the Kaichor News. Every time when we said there's a formula, and so according to this formula, we're taking $1.2 billion or $1.5 billion from the NRF to the Treasury this year to come over to the budget this year to fund the expenditures in the budget. We apply the formula, the money comes there, whatever remains with the NRF has to be managed by the board, the government doesn't get to touch that. So the money, 1.5 billion, say, US dollars in the budget to come from the NRF. Every time Ashni Singh releases 200 million, more money going to the oil and gas sector. It is what we approved in Parliament. It's just the releases that take place now. So he will release 200 million, 300 million another time, and then he would release at various times in the year for the whole 2024 up to 1.5 billion. It's not 1.8 billion or 3 billion that's being spent. It's the releases that he's obligated by law because of what we passed, the law we passed, that he must report on deposits and expenditure. Every time the money is made, transferred, he then from the NRF to the Treasury, he has to announce it. So when you add up all the releases for the year, it will end up to the same 1.5 billion that we approve at budget time. And people don't understand this. I see press conferences from APNU, Kaichur saying, oh, more money from the oil sector going, 200 million more, 500 million. It's the same money you approve. But this is so basic that how many times do I have to explain it? The same thing with most of the loans that we sign. These are loans to give effect to expenditure already catered for in the budget. One is approval of the expenditure, and the other is called financing of the expenditure. So the loan process that you go through, the announcements and the signing is the financing process of already approved expenditure by the National Assembly. I hope you understand this now. Okay? All right, you understand that. So that's one. The second thing is foreign direct investment, cost-benefit analysis. So, you know, I've explained already that the potential of this, our total resources, all of our deposits, by companies in Guyana as well as individuals in all the banks, is less than 10 billion US dollars. All your savings, my savings, even APNU think I got some big saving there. They might say mine is over 10 billion. So your saving, my saving, I couldn't help resist, but deal with that. And they, all the companies, less than $10 billion. So to build one FPSO, you know, it's about nearly $10 billion. So if we take all of our money we save all of our lives and build one FPSO, we may barely be able to fund one FPSO or maybe two FPSOs. That's it. We're left without no saving anymore in the country. All the money in the banking system gone from our savings. So sometimes people don't know. You have lots of opportunities in this country. So we have gold, we have oil and gas, we have other things. But to unlock the potential, because we keep talking about potential, to unlock the potential, you have to have investments to bring in, to dig it up, to process it, to export it. And we don't have the scale of resources necessary to unlock what is considered potential. Every leader in the past talk about Guyana and its great potential. But unless you unlock it, we had great hydro potential for all these years. We haven't built the hydropowers yet. The first one we tried to build at scale up, APNU killed it. Right? So, and it would take $800 million US dollars to build a plant like that. So we have to, of necessity, a country like ours, of necessity, has to be open to foreign direct investments. So if we want to grow wealthy, the United States of America, it's the biggest economy in the world, and the Chinese funds in the US. Now, you know the US is, and China has a big issues now, big battles. But Chinese government and the others have invested over $1 trillion in the US through government treasuries and other things, and directly in the economy. So even a country like the United States of America is open, with the biggest economy in the world, is open to foreign direct investment. So we have to remain open. The second point is that we're a small country, and so we will never be able to drive growth and well-being, get all of our people to become wealthier and rich if we depend only on domestic demand. The United States of America can grow its economy based on domestic demand alone. For us, we have to export of necessity because our demand for goods and services is so small, we'd never be able to grow economies of scale in production. So we have to fight for an open system to export our goods and services. So essentially, what we're saying, we have to remain open both ways, open to foreign direct investments and also open to exports, creating the conditions for export. That means comparably lower tariffs, etc., for different countries. So how do you do all of this and protect your people's rights? The labor laws have been strengthened. And so in this country now, we've ratified more ILO conventions than most countries in the world. We passed a Trade Union Recognition Act to strengthen workers' rights in this country. We have an Occupational and Safety Act to ensure that our workers are treated, they're not in sweatshop conditions like many countries in the world the ministry can go in, etc. We strengthen our trafficking in person provision, so if people work, they get their pay. We do it through legislative means. Secondly, we collect taxes in cases. In some cases, you waive the taxes to get a more favorable regime. So do we, for example, the corporate tax on the oil and, say, production of gold. We've increased the royalty rate. The locals have a different royalty rate. It's lower. But for large companies, you used to have to pay 5%, now you have to pay 8% royalty. That's on top. If you produce 100 ounces of gold, you have to give the state 8 ounces immediately. That's on top, right? So that's there. They'd still have to pay corporate tax, but the reason why most countries prefer royalty is that when people expense a lot of things, you're left with little taxable profit, taxable income. So that is why you have done this. So you give a lot of waivers for the large companies too, because you need to give that to get the projects often going, to make the numbers work well. So this is through the taxation system, through the jobs they bring. So when I went on Glenn Lyle's program, I said to him, he was ranting and raving about everything, all these foreigners who coming in and ripping us off. Look at the bauxite industry in the Berbice River. And I said to him, oh no, we can send away all of them. But let's take Berbice River. You all fighting? Roussel is leaving. We will give you, you put together a group. We will give you every concession they have and more. You tell us how much more you want. All the concessions. Every concession. All we want from you is 1,500 jobs or 1,000 jobs in the Berbice River, because people there don't have a job. So when you mention merely jobs, for people who have a job, it's cushy. But you talk to those people who don't have a job. They don't, Kaichur News and stuff could rant and rave every day about, oh, these only bring in jobs, getting the taxes. But you can tell that to people who don't have jobs, then it's a different story. So when we offer, I said, you do it. We'll give you all the tax concession. We just want 1,000 jobs there that APNU took away from that area. We wanted people in the Berbice River, Kwakwani, Aichuni, all of those areas, the whole stretch there going up to Kwakwani. We want those people to have the job. Up to now, no taker. Because the reality is that you have hundreds of other countries, not 100, but tens of other countries that are producing bauxite, that are producing it. You live in a competitive environment with a defined market. So the cost benefit you want to. Will the hotels, giving the hotels a 10 years tax holiday now benefit us or not versus the jobs we're getting? We're getting 500 jobs, but they don't have to pay 10 taxes there. So then, without the tax holiday, you wouldn't have a hotel, but you wouldn't have the job, and you'll be secure in your rights. We still own the dump site or something like that, when which the hotel was built, like the Marriott. That was a dump site. We're safeguarding this sacred piece of land, this dump site. No project there, nothing. That's the kind of thinking. It's backward. It's backward. It doesn't take account of risk. I told you already, there's certain risks that people take when they invest. The oil and gas sector is no different. If they explore and they don't find anything, they lose all their money because there's nothing to claim back on. Hundreds of millions of US dollars. Now, having said that, I'm all for protecting Guyana and our people and getting more for our people. That's why constantly the local content law, etc., we are moving to make sure our people benefit more from this. And they do benefit with an expanded economy, more disposable income. So when people have jobs, they can spend more, they can buy more fish in the market, they can buy more greens from the farmers. They'll pay a higher price to the farmers too for vegetables, because some people believe that farmers must work hard and supply them constantly with cheap vegetables their whole lives. Their income going up, but the farmers must now get more income for their vegetables, etc. They're working in the field. So, the price of bora gone up, that's what I'm saying. But the people have to struggle, fetch water long distances, etc. So that is in relation to foreign direct investment. I hope that you start understanding a bit of the philosophy, what it takes to develop a country like ours. And that it can't be the gripers. Christopher Ram will gripe about every foreign investment, the Van der Radzik, but they're wealthy. Glenlal has several buildings, etc. They complain. They're living a good life. So they would try to shut down everybody else. And some of it is bitterness too, but a lot of it is bitterness. But we got to think about other people. For them, jobs don't matter, but for others. The third issue is, I've dealt with this issue of cost of living. I've pointed out comparatively how we're dealing with it. Now, the prices have even in some areas come down from the COVID period. You just take a few items, like oil, cooking oil. You check what it was in the COVID period. You're saying, no, I take your wager that I look at the prices in the COVID period, it's skyrocketed 200% in some areas. So that's it. The constant issue will be, it's a comparative thing. It's a comparative thing. So we are faring much better than others. You've just discounted all of that. Suriname is raising electricity prices, right? So that's cost of living increase. I just told you earlier today that when the price was $44 a barrel for fuel, on the afternoon 2016, the tariff at GPL, the price you were paying per kilowatt hour was 56 Ghana dollars. And the price has gone to the oil price has gone to $104 a barrel, and we're supplying power now at 50 cents per kilowatt hour. Reduce it, and the price of fuel, which is the bulk of their cost, has more than doubled. How do you think that's done? To keep the cost of living even. And other countries don't do that. They don't have the means to do that. I just told you that. That's one. I told you the last time that gasoline and diesel prices, if we allow the taxes to be there, the 50% tax that was there all the time, the prices would have been sky high, very high now. The 50% excise tax we remove cost us, depending on how you look at it, it's upper limit 75 billion to between 40 to 75 billion, because there are sectors that are exempt that are using some of these fuel. So that's another subsidy. How do you think that has happened? We also return to giving the pensioners free water. Water prices have now gone upwards since we got into office, although their cost of input, which is electricity and all of the other things, have been going up, and other items. In fact, Some places, we've adjusted the prices downwards, and the pensioners get free water. Are these not important things? The price of data. Data has come down, and or you get more capacity now, and also we removed the 10% tax on the 14% tax on data. So I'm just giving you a few items. Water, we kept constant. Electricity, we kept it on fuel because it affects transportation and agriculture and mining. We removed the taxes there. We've done it on data. These are big components of cost. We're looking at rentals now. Rentals in the city is skyrocketing because of the greater demand. But look, we're opening up more housing schemes, so people are owning more things. The price of stone and sand and stuff has gone up, but yes, we are helping people at the lower end through this arrangement where they get free steel and cement for their base. That's people building at the lower end of the scale. We are building core homes now for people and taking them to the bank. We're also building young professional homes, a whole range of things, infrastructure. So we're tackling that component too. And we're already we open up 6 new quarries or so the price of stone has come down back. All of these things are being tackled. Even some food prices, some have gone up, some are seasonal, and some come down. It's a lot of seasonal stuff. When you look at it, the efforts, I'm not even going to go and talk about cost of input, how we have helped a lot of people in cost of input. So you tell me a country that has been doing this anywhere in our region, taking all of these measures, and that has removed all the taxes that APNU put on people, to $40 billion of taxes. Remove a lot of issues, like the cost. Anyhow, let me don't go on. I think that's enough. So the US dollar now, we made it clear that I explained this. We believe that it's the choppiness of demand when you look at the entire market. On aggregate supply and aggregate demand, it should even itself out at a rate that doesn't see massive appreciation nor any major depreciation. Our interest now is in keeping the currency around a particular range, the historic range. So what happens though is that some banks have more foreign currency because they have more customers and suppliers of foreign currency than other banks, and they don't share their currency. So if you're dealing with one bank, etc., we are committed. The moment that we find that this is a sustained shortage, we can inject large amount of foreign currency into the system. The central bank can do that. That's done in other countries. But we don't want, I explained about the Dutch disease too. I just had to explain this when I was in a community outreach in Albuiston and La Penitence, West La Penitence. A guy asked me about the currency, when would the currency appreciate? And I said, look at Japan. The yen to the US dollar is 150. Japan is probably the 3rd largest economy or so in the world. The size of your currency or the magnitude. Some Caribbean countries are like 2 to 1 and others country 1 to 1. It doesn't mean that they are bigger than Japan or got a stronger economy. Japan is 150 to 1. But every time the rate comes down to 125 or 100, you know, the government gets worried because it starts killing their exports, because they can't compete with other countries because the currency acts against your competitiveness in your exports. So that governments, when they have resources, windfall. This is the Dutch disease phenomenon. They want to make sure that the rate don't appreciate too much. Appreciating rates doesn't mean that you're getting wealthy as a country. It could harm you in the long run and lead to unintended consequences, the same one that we're trying to avoid. So, but let me make it clear to the market and anyone out there. The moment we believe that there's a sustained shortage, because we get daily reports from the central bank on these matters. If we believe there's a sustained shortage, then we can inject large amounts. We have the capacity to do that. That's what central banks are there for, to smooth out markets. And we wouldn't hesitate to use the central bank to smooth out the market, including a market for foreign currency. The fourth area is GRA. I will look into this matter directly, what's holding it up. Personally, I will look into this. Please don't in 3 weeks' time or in another 3 months come back to these things again, because they have a way of coming around to the same issues. If there are new things based on those, well, that's fine. Go ahead. Yeah.
Trina Williams, Ghana Chronicle. Today, once again, the opposition was questioned about their oil and gas committee, not for political reasons, but for the media and the general public. Among the many things that was said, Norton said, don't worry yourself with who is on our oil and gas committee. Now, this sort of statement comes at a time when Guyana's oil and gas sector is expanding. However, what was said is that upon the 2025 elections, they will outline their policies. The opposition has a tendency, as seen in 2015, to give very much exaggerated policies. Do you believe that next year they will use this sort of strategy?
So I explained that when you don't have a vision, you don't have a plan, you don't have policies and programs, you tend to drift in the wind. And the word I use is wishy-washy. So they tend to be very anecdotal, they tend to generalize, they criticize, but they don't have, and the criticisms are not even technical, they lie a lot, but they don't have counter offers. If you look at the period when we're in opposition, every issue we had a view on. Our manifesto outlined, we were now in government, we outlined what we were going to do in the oil and gas sector. We outlined it clearly. We were speaking about this long from 2015, urging them to do certain things. And in every area, in every single area, we had views, we defended our views, they were grounded in facts, they were grounded in technical assessments, etc. So, this is the situation. Norton, so what will happen is they will get somebody to come and write up something that sounds good on textbook, like the Green State Economy. They brought in some consultants, Granger, and he produced a thick document called Green State Economy. And if you look at it, it's plagiarism, it's statement of intent, it's quoting all the declarations in the world. It's not a Guyana-based strategy like how we have the LCDS, and it now is a method for earning money, dealing with adaptation, protecting biodiversity, managing our water like in an integrated way. All of that is part of the strategy. We have programs to do that already. We're funding the program. He got a green state strategy that looked good. We have a green state strategy. They all parrot it, plant couple trees, and they wave it everywhere. Meaningless. And so I think your fear is justified that there will be exaggerated things to do. And then they will pander to everybody. They will pander to the Kaichor News. So that is why every week, these guys are shameless. They're being led by a blind man who is incapable of understanding anything about any sector, oil and gas, Glenn Lal. And because they want to pander, they're scared of taking a strong policy position for fear of being criticized. Never mind, they know that's the right thing to do. They know, but they're scared of doing that. We have no such fear because we have to defend our policies. We believe it's only fair to the people of this country that you tell them what your policies are and you defend them. And so they drift every week. Every week they go on, 1 week, as I said before, we're for ring fencing, but we don't have all the data. We now have all the data. We'll make an assessment on ring fencing. We will look at the royalty rate 1 week. We don't believe this. It should be 10%. It should be 3%. Do you want to ring fence? Oh, we're thinking about it. That's the kind of confusion all the time. And it doesn't happen only in oil and gas, on everything else. Everything else. So Norton now, he is overpromising again. But we've seen that in 2015. Nobody believes anything that PNC says again. You would have a repeat of 2015. The same people who talk a lot about corruption. I have here, look, Ferguson. Ferguson, I was just going through Civil Aviation Authority. I was asking last night, Patterson and tell me a bit about thing. Annette Ferguson, funded by the GCA, she, in the 5-year period, spent $18.6 million on trips abroad. Annette Ferguson. We have a mine of information that if you dig, because we've been so busy working, that we haven't really gone into this mine. Maybe I need some FDI to dig up all this, right? Foreign direct investment, to dig up all of this. Because the same people are asking questions in Parliament, now they're reformed. Well, it takes a lot to get a reform, but now they become the conscience of the country. $18 million on trips funded by the GCA, and I don't know, because sometimes they get the agencies to fund the trip. I don't know if it's the case in this instance, but what we found is, like with the Patterson case, the agencies or the cabinet, the treasury fund the trip. They get reimbursed for the trip, but they don't pay back. That's one. And in many cases, they take the money from the agency, but then the cabinet, the treasury, gives them the money also to go on the same trip. So they use the same cabinet paper twice. So we got to look at all of these things. If we just dig into this, some of them would not even be able to show their faces. But I guess we just need to move on and focus on our people and the country. But don't expect any better from Norton. They're gonna promise, like Coretta McDonald today. Oh, we will do this when we get into power. You got a long wait there. You better fix the teachers' union first. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, Samuel Suknandan, NCN News. Dr. Jagdeo, the GPSU has written the Ministry of Labour again over plans to take industrial action for what they claim to be failure to engage in collective bargaining. How do you view this latest decision?
Well, I don't want to preempt anything here at this press conference. So they would be dealt with in accordance with the grievance procedures that are established by law under the Labour Act. So they will be dealt with in that manner. But a lot of them, these are APNU-instigated places. They really, what has GPSU done for the public servants, really? We have been trying, even in difficult circumstances, to move on wages, the condition of the workplace. Public servants are getting scholarships now through the GOLD program. The teachers have 4,000 scholarships. Those same teachers, 2,000 were trained at Cyril Potter College. They're getting house lots. The same teachers and public servants getting house lots, etc. They would just, these unions, just sit there, collect the dues from the public servants and the teachers and the others, spend the money in an unaccountable way, don't produce any statements, 20 years and all of that. So Lincoln Lewis, I don't even know if he still has members in his union, but I don't think he has members. I think he's a sole, he's the sole proprietor of the entire union. You got something like that. I don't even know. He's still a union leader. I don't know if he has membership. So you're okay. No question? All right. Thank you. That's fine. All right. Gotta go to today. Next week you can save those other questions. Glenn, like he didn't, it wasn't